Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to revisit a Ringo Starr album, which I haven't done for several years. This particular album, Goodnight, Vienna. This is my original UK copy, which, as you can see, I picked up second-hand for £1.75 in the late 70s, I guess, sometime around then. Quite annoying that a second-hand shop would actually write the price on the sleeve, but anyway. Comes with my rather tattered copy of the lyric sheet here, with all the pictures of the people appearing, and the UK copies came on this sort of Milky Way label, and in fact most countries came with that label. And well, what shall I do? Shall I show you my 4 copies first? So this is my US copy, reissue, February 81, I think it was, Capitol. This is sealed. And I think this is on the Capitol. I didn't open it, but I think it's on the Capitol label, not on the Milky Way label. But I picked that up in the States a few years ago. This is my Greek copy on the green apple. Nice to see Goodnight, Vienna on the green Greek apple here. And then my last copy is the new vinyl, which came out a few years ago, which I won't get out and show you. It's got the lyrics inside, of course. So the album. Let's talk about the album cover first, shall we? From a 1950s film called "The Day the Earth Stood Still," and Ringo's replaced the actor's head with his own. The actor was playing a character called Klaatu, and Ringo's replaced it with his own head. This is quite a vintage sort of sci-fi movie from the 50s, and Klaatu was a band which was formed in North America and sort of did Beatle-type music, and some people actually thought it was the Beatles. My son's got a couple of their albums. I can't really see what all the fuss is about. They don't sound too Beatle-y to me, but people were taken in, which was quite amusing, I suppose. Roy Kohara is involved in the cover here. That's the back cover. Roy Kohara would do the cover for several solo Beatles albums, including Walls and Bridges, from Lennon, Rock and Roll from Lennon, Rock and Roll Music from the EMI compilation of the Beatles from '76, and a couple of others. Shaved Fish, I think he was involved in as well. Anyway, so that's the cover. Good cover, I like it. And actually, everyone talks about this being a slightly poor relation to the Ringo album, but I listened to it loud in preparation for this review, and I was thoroughly impressed with this whole album. It's got a whole wealth of musicians, and the musicianship, I have to say, is staggeringly high all the way throughout. You really do find a groove together, helping Ringo develop various styles for various different songs. So we've got Jim Kelton and Ringo on drums, John Lennon guests on piano for the title track, which he wrote for Ringo, and he's on guitar on 2 other tracks. Steve Cropper on guitar, Jesse Ed Davis on guitar, Richard Perry producing, a masterful producer. I'll come to his production in a bit, but I was going to say I don't really have too many Richard Perry albums in my collection. I think I've got 2 Nielsen albums, Nielsen, Schmielsen and Son of Schmielsen. These 2 Ringo albums, Ringo and Goodnight, Vienna, and Art Garfunkel, Breakaway. I think those are the only 5 I have. But a remarkable producer, and just suited Ringo down to the ground. Brilliant. Dr. John playing superb piano. David Foster, another pianist who would crop up on Extra Texture from George the following year, 75. Billy Preston makes an appearance. Bobby Keys is on here. Gary Wright. Lon Van Eaton and Derek Van Eaton, a duo who had been on the Apple label. James Newton Howard on synthesizer from Elton John's band is on here. Harry Nilsson, Clyde King on backing vocals. May Pang helps out. Nicky Hopkins, Klaas Voormann. As you can see, the list is pretty much endless, and you can have fun spotting a few of them on here. For example, that's Elton, obviously. That's Lennon at the top, sitting next to Richard Perry, the producer. We've got Lennon and Ringo there. We've got Billy Preston here. Jim Keltner there. Who else is obvious? Dr. John there. And then this group shot at the bottom, you can see Richard Perry, you can see May Pang. Or presumably they're singing along to the title track reprise, the Goodnight Vienna, or maybe the title track itself. Anyway, so that's the musicianship. And I just want to talk about, I want to say Richard Perry does a superb job producing this album, but also I think credit must go to Trevor Lawrence, who not only plays the horns along with Bobby Keys and a couple of other people, but he also arranged the horns, and the horns really make a lot of these tracks. Like Snookeroo features a superb horn arrangement, so does No No Song, so does Acapella, and I think, you know, maybe he doesn't get a songwriting credit for it, but it certainly was part of the flavour of those songs and all the way through. And I love the way Richard Perry will take a particular song and decide what musicianship is needed for that particular song. For example, Husbands and Wives, the Roger Miller ballad, he just kept it very simple, 2 acoustic guitars and an electric guitar solo from Richard Bennett was absolutely outstanding, and Ringo singing this mournful vocal. I think it's absolutely stunning. And then a cappella, he sort of pads it out a bit by having a sort of instrumental passage leading up to the da-dup, da-dup, and da-dup, that bit, which was presumably wasn't part of Alan Toussaint's original lyric, and sort of kind of makes the song. It's the highlight of the song. And No No Song is sort of enhanced by an extra sort of instrumental passage with horns, so Trevor Lawrence can take credit for that. Elton John comes into the studio to help Ringo on the song he wrote with Bernie Taupin for Ringo, Snookeroo, which is possibly one of my top 5 Ringo songs ever. So just really nice choice of musicianship. Ooh-Wee would not have worked as a ballad, but it works perfectly well as a rocker. And Dennis Coffey, I mean, most times I know the musicians playing on these solo Beatles records, but there's a few names which, you know, I'm sitting there admiring their work, but I don't know really much about their lives. Dennis Coffey on guitar on Ooh-Wee, Dr. John playing superb piano on the same track. And as I mentioned, Richard Bennett playing that killer solo on Husbands and Wives, don't know much about him either. Robbie Robertson turns up and does a stunning... I love the way, for the break in Snookeroo, instead of having a guitar solo lasting 16 bars, they've got Robbie Robertson does a stunning guitar solo for the first 8 bars, and then Elton bashes away on the piano for the second half, so they kind of share the spotlight. And notice on Snookeroo that James Newton Howard's synthesizer is very noticeable, and he featured on quite a few Elton classics, including Rock of the Westies, which came out the following year to this, and also Blue Moves from 76. And he was on a few earlier ones as well. All By Myself, I think, is a very nice track. It's the second track after Ooh-Wee, co-written with Vinnie Poncia, Richard Starkey, Vinnie Poncia composition. And instead of, I think for Ooh-Wee, he says Richard Starkey, Vinnie Poncia, but for All By Myself, he's reversed it. So Vinnie Poncia probably had more to do with writing All By Myself, and I think it's an absolutely stunning opener to side 2. I think it's even better than Oh My My, which opened side 2 of the Ringo album. And just a bit of genius from Richard Perry coming up with that, "Well, don't you know I'm bound?" That bass vocal, absolute highlight of the song. Call Me, some people say it's a bit of a plodder, it does go on a bit, but nice piano from David Foster and nice personal words from Ringo. I'm not sure who he's addressing the song to, maybe a combination of a few women, because he was sort of splitting up with Maureen and he had a fling with a couple of people and he was going to get with Nancy. I'm not quite sure who this song is. It might be Chris O'Dell who it's addressed to, I'm not sure, but it's a very nice personal song. and very nice backing vocals from Vinny and Richard Perry and others. No Song is an absolutely hilarious song. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was virtually written for Ringo. I don't think he had a huge hit, Hoyt Axton, with it before. It's copyrighted 74 on the lyric sheet, and this album came out in 74. So tell me if you've heard another famous version of it, but I'm pretty sure Ringo's version is kind of the most well known, and it's a hilarious song and brilliant electric piano from Nicky Hopkins. Great choice for Ringo to sing, and an amusing sort of anti-drugs, anti-drink song with Ringo at the end of the song saying, can I just have another drink, barman? And Harry and Nilsson saying, I'll have the same. And Ringo says, I'll have a large brandy. And so this is in the middle of his sort of happy-go-lucky joie de vivre years, before it went a little sour, before he became a complete alcoholic. He was having quite a good time at the moment, although his marriage was breaking up. But he hadn't hit rock bottom during Goodnight Vienna. This is one of his strongest albums. And although I like his late 70s albums, this album is on a par with Ringo and a contender for his very best work, even though I have a very soft spot for Bo Coops of Blues from 1970s, you know. Only You is an inspired choice from Lennon, and you can, if you want to hear Lennon's version, it's on the Lennon Anthology. He did a demo for Ringo with his vocal, and just sent it to Ringo, and Ringo, well, he actually turned up to the studio, and I think he was on hand to sort of help Ringo put his vocal on, and there's a bit of the Lennon guide vocal left on at the end. You can hear at the end of the song. And it's charmingly sung by Ringo, and there's a great video on the top of the Capitol Tower in Los Angeles with Harry Nilsson and Ringo miming to this song. And it's quite amusing because Ringo doesn't always attempt to hit the notes. He kind of half speaks, half sings, and very effectively, in my opinion. Easy for Me is a kind of lush ballad with some nice strings arranged by Trevor Lawrence and Vinnie Poncia. It's a little out of place on this album, but it works okay. Nilsson would do it himself on his album, Do It on Monday. It's fine. I quite enjoyed it, listening to it just now. Goodnight Vienna. Did I talk about the title track? Maybe I left it out. I'll go back and cover the title track now, because I think I left it out. Pounding piano intro from John. Great sort of verse, and then that's about it. There's no real chorus, and they sort of do this get it up section to try and sort of disguise the fact that there's no chorus. So it's a little bit repetitive, a little bit thin on top in terms of as a song, but it works well as a pounding opener, and it's even to the effect that it's the title track of the album, and it's reprised at the end in true Beatles fashion. The beginning of the reprise, it's John Lennon's voice who says, "Okay, boys, with gusto, with gusto." That's John. I always thought it might have been Ringo growing up, but we actually deferred to May Pang and asked her the question, and she confirmed that that's John's voice, because he was kind of leading the session, so it makes sense that it was him. So I like Goodnight Vienna, but I would say there are stronger tracks on the album. Acapella is a charming, very well-chosen song for Ringo to sing, written by Alan Toussaint, and I think all of the songs work, and there's no real weak link, and the album did well. It got to number 8 in the US and number 30 in the UK, so not very well in the UK. I'll just show you my singles from this album. This is the single which charted in the US, got to number 6, all the way to number 6. It's on the Milky Way label. Didn't chart in the UK very successfully. This is a German single of Snookeroo with Ooh Wee on the back, and this is on Apple with the annoying hole in the middle. This non-UK Apple singles always have the hole in the middle, which really is quite frustrating. This is a UK Apple single without the hole, so you see what I mean now. So that's Snookeroo and Ooh Wee. Didn't do very well when released as a single. Unfortunately, I think this is a Yugoslav copy, again backed with Ooh Ooh Wee, and this is a sort of faded apple. And then we've got Goodnight Vienna, which I don't really think should have ever been a single, but it did actually manage to get to number 31, backed with Ooh Wee. And that's a French single, so you can see the French apple with the missing hole in the middle. And then lastly, we've got, I think this is a UK single which came out in support of Blast From Your Past, called Oh My My on the A side, from the Ringo album, backed with No No Song on the B side. And that didn't chart at all. But in the US, I'm glad to say that the No No Song backed with Snookeroo was a kind of double A side, I think, got to number 3. So Ringo was still charting in the US pretty successfully, and the following album, Rotter Graveur, would yield a top 30 single, but in the UK his chart success was basically a thing of the past. After this album he would not trouble the charts after this, but that's not necessarily a terrible thing. The solo Beatles were not as influential as the 70s wore on as they had been earlier. So that was Ringo, Goodnight Vienna. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.